Welcome to Inside Leisure World. I'm your host, Joseph Valentinetti, and we're going to be talking today about trees. Trees have long been a symbol of life in our society. Common phrases like tree of life and the tree of knowledge occur in everyday language. We're lucky today to have as our guest James Coleman, who's an arborist, and Don Hodel from UC Davis, who's an environmental horticulturist, to talk about the right tree in the right place at the right time. James, I'd like to start with you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an arborist. I've been doing a lot of consulting work lately, and I'm a part owner of Class 1 Arboriculture, which is a tree trimming business that's been doing a lot of the trees in Leisure World, Seal Beach. I'm very good friends with Don. Don and I have collaborated on some experiments in the past. We just recently completed one at the LA County Arboretum on tree appraisal, and yeah, it's been really good working with Don.
And let me ask you another thing, James, because there's an interesting fact about your education. Tell us about the education that you had in order to get you into this profession.
Oh, well, actually, I originally went to film school. I went to USC Film School, and I did try to make it in film, but I did make a transition to arboriculture. I was doing YouTube instructional video series for an arborist in northern Glendale. His name was Gary Knowlton, and he published his Prune Like a Pro is the name of the video series on YouTube. And I did all the videography. I did, I put the series together. But I learned what he taught in the series, and then I took the exam, and then he started feeding me clients, and I just made the transition pretty smoothly from film into arboriculture.
Because you wanted to eat.
Things have been very good since then, and I haven't looked back.
Great. Don, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I born and raised in Southern California, actually near Whittier. I went to Cal Poly Pomona with a degree in ornamental horticulture, and by that time I had fallen in love with palm trees, and so I decided to pursue graduate studies at the University of Hawaii. So I went to Hawaii, got my graduate degree, lived in the islands for about 5 or 6 years, then came back to California, where I've been working for the University of California for 32 years now, doing applied research projects and educational programs for people in the commercial landscape industry, people like James.
Okay. You hear all the time that the palm tree is not native to California. Is that true?
Well, we do have one native palm tree in California. It's called the California fan palm, and it grows in the desert around seeps and springs in the Coachella Valley, like behind Palm Springs, for how Palm Springs gets its name, and a few other locations. But we have a lot of exotic palms that are in our landscape. So we do have one true California native palm here.
What's the benefit, James, of having trees?
Well, you got numerous benefits, but the one that I usually focus on is it increases your property values. People perceive properties to be worth more when there's trees in the landscape, when you have a growing landscape, and there's this subconscious feeling of establishment of a landscape when you have a tree in it, because it means that the landscape has been hospitable to that tree for as long as that tree's been alive. But I mean, trees also provide cooling shade, home for birds and other insects, and they're just really nice. They're really nice to have in your landscape.
They are. What effect do the trees have on climate change, for example?
Well, some of the benefits that the trees have that definitely affect climate change are the ability of trees to sequester carbon from the atmosphere. So if we have less carbon in the atmosphere, we have less global warming.
How do they do that?
Well,
break down sequester.
Okay, so here's how a tree sequesters carbon through a process called photosynthesis. So trees have these leaves on them that act like solar receptors. They collect light energy and then through the leaves they take in carbon dioxide. That's where the carbon's coming from. And then inside the leaves, with the presence of the carbon dioxide and the light energy from the sun, a chemical reaction occurs that produces sugars and, as a byproduct, oxygen. So the tree gives off oxygen, which we all need, and produces sugars that the tree needs to grow on. So that's basically what when we're talking about carbon sequestration, that's what it is.
Okay, so in a sense, trees clean the air
Clean the air.
and provide oxygen, and also in cities where there's a lot of blacktop and stuff like that, that heat absorbing, and it tends to keep the area hotter than it would be naturally. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. Trees are very good at mitigating even day-to-day heating and cooling. So they provide shade, which reduces sunlight, and they also, just the fact that they transpire, that they're releasing water vapor into the air, cools the atmosphere.
Transpire, is that like perspire?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit, sure.
So is that some of the ways that trees help save water?
The tree, well, transpiration is the process of liberating water as vapor, and also O2, oxygen, and then taking in carbon dioxide. So there's three parts of that process.
Okay. I've heard that trees reduce violence. Is there a possibility that that's true? They say that neighborhoods that have trees have a lower crime rate than neighborhoods that don't have trees.
Well, perhaps it's not a cause and effect relationship. Maybe it's just that neighborhoods that have trees are higher up on the socioeconomic ladder. I'm not sure, but one of the amenities or benefits that trees do provide is this psychological benefit, this sense of well-being, of living in a nicer place, and perhaps that plays a role in crime or lack of crime.
Let's talk about something that's very important now in California, the drought. Okay. Would you like to start with that, James?
Well, as we're all familiar with, the water is a limited resource, and we have been instructed to conserve as much as 30% in some cities. I know in Glendora, which is where I live, they sent out a notice that we all have to cut back 30% of our water. And so a lot of people they're getting afraid. They're saying, well, we need to just stop watering our landscapes and let everything go dry. And actually, I think I heard on NPR today they just passed a law that said that homeowners associations can't hassle you if you let your landscape dry out and die by not watering. They used to be able to do that, but now they can't. But I think really we can still have our trees in our landscape, and all we really have to adjust is how we apply the water, and if we better utilize the application rate and better match it to the needs of the tree and then also to the site conditions, we'll use a lot less water and still maintain the landscapes rather than having to sacrifice them.
Yeah, and Don, I think that this is a favorite of yours, the drought.
Well, I've done a lot of research in water use of plants during my 32 years at University of California. So I do have some experience in that area. And I think one thing that we should know firsthand is of all the water used in California, statewide, less than 9% ends up on trees, lawns, flowers, shrubs, ground covers in the urban setting. So that's not a very small amount. That's a very small amount of water when you consider the amenities and benefits, the numerous amenities and benefits that landscape and trees provide. And James touched on some of them, I touched on some of them. And I feel that we can have our landscapes, even our much maligned lawns, in this time of serious drought if we just managed them properly and irrigated them properly.
Okay, so most of the water lost then, or most of the water used is in farming.
Right. Agriculture uses about 3/4 of all the water in California, but we need food. We need to eat. and actually, agriculture, along with our industry, the industry that James and I work with, the arboriculture and landscape industries, we have adapted a lot of science and technology that enables us to apply precisely the amounts of water that plants need to maintain adequate growth. We know that. It's a science, actually, and agriculture, big agriculture uses it, and we often use it in the landscape too.
Okay.
There's actually tables that are published online. They're evapotranspiration tables, and they'll tell you that in a given section, a geographic region, at a given time of year, at a given time of day, it's the rate at which water is lost from plants and from the ground. And if you were so inclined, if you were either doing a major expensive installation of trees or if you wanted to have a perfectly water-wise landscape, you can look up these values and you can look up the water holding capacity of your soil, and you can calculate the rate at which water is lost and then the amount of water that you need to apply each irrigation in order to fill up the soil's water holding capacity. I guess for a moment, think of the soil as being a sponge, and rather than when you're watering, the plant is drinking. Don't think of it that way. Think of it as you're putting water in a sponge, and then all throughout this period of time, the tree is very slowly absorbing the water. The tree, the grass, whatever plants are growing, they're slowly absorbing the water from the sponge. Eventually that sponge is going to run dry, so you got to make sure the sponge stays moist. But sometimes if you have sandy soil, it'll be a very porous sponge, or if you have clay soil, it'll be more of a thick sponge. You want to be able to put enough water in that it's always moist in the upper 12 to 36 inches of soil, depending on how deep the roots of the plants are going, and that you're not applying more than is being used at once. Otherwise, you're going to lose your water due to leaching and drainage. It's just going to be wasted water. If we can just hit that sweet spot medium, I think that we can reduce our water usage but still retain most or all of our plants in the landscape.
Yeah, that shows a little bit how trees save water in a way, because they prevent water from running off, right? From just running away and disappearing. Like, you often wonder if we have a really heavy rain or something like that, why we don't get complete benefit from all the water that falls.
Well, that brings up a point about there are a lot of hidden costs that people don't realize if we stop irrigating our landscape. And that's another benefit you mentioned, that trees, because of the nature of their canopy and the way the leaves are held and positioned in the canopy, trees actually slow down runoff from rainfall. They collect rainfall, they channel it to the trunk where it can move into the soil more slowly. And so, yes, trees actually conserve water. If we had no trees in our landscape or other vegetation, the water would run right down into the gutters and be lost. So trees are really important. Another hidden cost would be when we have trees starting to die, their branches will fall out, or their trunks will fall out, and that's a huge liability. There'll be a lot of property damage and perhaps human damage, and these are costs that are rarely considered when we hear people say, well, we just can't irrigate anything anymore. We have to conserve the water, and or retrofit an irrigation system to drip, say, which is a good, but that costs money too. So there are a lot of hidden costs here that need to be considered when we talk about reducing or stopping irrigation.
Yeah, trees and plants then also probably have a profound effect on soil erosion.
Absolutely.
Could you talk on that a little bit about soil
sure.
erosion and its effects?
Trees mitigate or reduce soil erosion from rainfall and irrigation in several ways. One is through their leaf litter. The natural dropping of or falling of leaves, the leaves collect on the soil surface, and they slow down runoff. They get the rainfall or irrigation water to percolate or infiltrate into the soil more slowly. And then the tree's roots themselves. Trees basically have most of their roots in the upper foot of soil. And the roots that are important for erosion control is the fine network of feeder roots that forms a very dense and extensive network very close to the soil surface. And without this extensive network of roots, we would be losing a lot of soil every time it rains, which isn't very often anymore, it seems, or every time we irrigate.
Or every time the wind blows.
Or every time the wind blows. Good point.
And trees provide a good canopy for habitat and for wildlife, which also enriches our environment. Can you talk, what are the value in that regard do palm trees provide, for example?
Well, palms provide the same amenities and benefits that other more traditional trees provide. It's just that because they have smaller canopies, you have to have more of them to provide those amenities and benefits. But it's no problem to plant more palms. They have root systems that are non-aggressive and can grow well in constricted areas. But palms actually, for example, the native California fan palm out in the desert, it's like the tree of life for wildlife in the desert because it provides food in its small date-like fruits, and it provides habitat. It has these big leaves that provide a lot of protection from the sun and the elements, and it has lots of fibers that birds use in building their nests. So, and to the Native American Indians that seasonally lived in the desert, the palm is surely the tree of life for all it provides.
Okay. Trees perform another function that I see in that they block things. Like you put a tree up and then you don't see the wall that's there, or you don't see the shopping center. Can you talk about trees from an aesthetic point of view?
Sure. Trees function to soften structures. Trees can also be used in the landscape to gradually unfurl a view. So like imagine you're driving along a road and there's a group of trees and then there's an opening in the cluster of trees, revealing something behind them. That can be used as an entrance for, say, a mansion or for like a museum, some sort of a grand entrance. But they're also good for combining landscapes. Imagine an urban, an urban skyline, and without any canopy. It would just be blocks of buildings. But by adding the touches of green in between the buildings, you're going to aesthetically blend them into one unified whole.
Yeah, they say that trees increase business traffic because on tree-lined streets, even irregardless of the speed limit, people slow down on tree-lined streets, and that they'll take more time to pass through a neighborhood. That thus makes businesses in that area more attractive. Can you tell us a little bit about the research you're doing on palm trees at the present time?
Well, right now I have several research projects going. One of them I just finished up. It was looking at whether the gender of a particular tree, palm tree, some palms are like people. They have male and female individuals. And I was noticing that often the female trees of this one species of palm called a Canary Island day palm were exhibiting more severe symptoms of nutrient deficiencies than their male counterparts. So I did a study on that, and James helped analyze the data for that, and there's a definite correlation in that female trees, because of the fruit stalks they produce, tend to show more severe symptoms of nutrient deficiency than the male trees. And this information is useful to landscape managers, because they'll know that if they have female trees of this species of palm, which is a very common palm, that they might have to apply more fertilizer or more mulch in order to avoid the nutrient deficiency symptoms.
So Is this a common thing among all trees, a male and female?
No, that condition is called called dioecious. Trees are dioecious if they have separate male and female individuals. I would say most trees and plants in the landscape are monoecious. They have male and female on the same tree, male and female flowers, or the flowers are perfect. They have both male and female parts in the same flower on the same tree.
But in this particular palm, that's not true.
Yes, it's the group called Phoenix or the date palms. But I've also done research in water use of palms. I've done research in transplanting palms, pruning palms, leaf removal and tie-up. And all this research is very applied. It develops information that people in the industry, like James, can take out to their job immediately and use.
And how have you used some of that
Well, actually,
research?
another one of the research projects that actually Don didn't mention was this appraisal experiment that we did.
Tell us about that.
Sure, we went to the Arboretum, and the LA County Arboretum, and we had 14 different certified arborists all appraise the same 10 trees independently of each other. And we had them just fill out a uniform form and use the industry standards for appraisal and to assign a final dollar value to each of these trees.
Maybe you should explain why appraisal is so critical in the industry.
Oh, okay. I guess
That's good.
no. Okay, so there's to backtrack a little bit. Appraisal is very important in the industry because there's often conflicts that require the appraisal of trees. For example, if you have neighboring property owners, one of them cuts down the other guy's tree. He's going to ask to be compensated for his loss. He wants to be compensated for the loss of the tree. You have to be able to assign a dollar value to that loss. Or let's say one is destroyed by fire, or let's say you're a real estate agent and trying to appropriately price a property based on the presence of an advanced mature landscape. You want to know how much those trees are worth in the landscape. So all of these, if there's a major construction project, sometimes cities will require contractors to post a bond in a particular amount to say that they need to pay to replace a certain stand of trees if those trees happen to die during construction. So in order to be able to determine how much that bond amount is, they need to have an appraiser come out and say this is how much the tree is worth. Anyway, the appraisal is a very hotbed issue in arboriculture. And you'll have many arborists that are going to disagree.
I could imagine it would be.
Yeah, because usually there's a lot of money involved
Yes.
in the value of a tree, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases.
So there's a commonly used formula. It's called the trunk formula method. The idea is you measure the cross-sectional area of a tree at breast height, 4.5 feet above grade, and you measure the circumference, calculate the diameter, calculate the cross-sectional area. And you do the same on the largest available transplantable tree in the nursery, and then you scale it up. So if you imagine, so it's a 3 square inch trunk on a nursery tree, but it's a 600 square inch trunk on a historic oak. So you do the multiplication out, and that's your base value. And from there, you depreciate it by...
Okay, so
go ahead.
just so that I understand this, you have this 3-inch tree, and you have this hundreds of inches tree.
Yes.
And you take the value of the 3-inch tree
Per square
and
inch.
multiply it by the number of square inches. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right, now
but that's just your base value.
Okay.
From there, you have to depreciate it based on the species condition and location ratings. And so basically those 3 elements plus the actual measurement is what we studied in the recent experiment at the Arboretum.
When you tell me what we found
Well, this is the great thing about the findings. We had many arborists come up with wildly different answers. They were very far apart. We had one tree appraised by one guy for $50,000. We had another guy come in around $250,000. Same tree. And with this kind of variance among appraisers,
That's the gold tree, right? The thing that
we want to bring that variance down. Otherwise, there's not going to be much trust in any given appraisal. Mm-hmm. So that's what the goal of our future research is. Well, you asked earlier, I guess going all the way back, you asked
Go
me
ahead, yeah.
how do we apply this? Well, I've definitely applied this. I tell this to my clients now. Every time they ask for an appraisal, I say, there's a good deal of variation in these appraisals.
Okay, and then has there been any other work? Once you give someone an appraisal, then they report this to the insurance company? How is this?
Well, appraisals could be used in many different ways. One of them is for insurance purposes, and James mentioned them. One is for protecting a tree, posting a bond for it during construction. So to me, the striking thing about this study we did at the Arboretum, and which is actually in press, that will be published soon, was how the same arborist could walk up to a tree, and we can get two wildly different values for that tree. Some of which it's almost all inherent or due to arborist differences in measuring. But we think that there's in the process there's some problems with the process that actually increase the chances of arborists making mistakes.
Like eating tree. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about trees and their value to a neighborhood in terms of civic pride?
Yes, I wrote a book actually about what was called Exceptional Trees of Los Angeles.
Please tell people that I didn't know that.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that you wrote that book.
Oh, you didn't know that. Oh,
it's
okay.
It's just a question that occurred to me.
Yeah, I didn't know if you knew that or not. But I wrote a book called Exceptional Trees of Los Angeles that identified over 150 individual trees around the greater Los Angeles area that were exceptional because of their age, size, or cultural historic value. And like you can read the history of Southern California through its trees. For example, I found a tree in northern Los Angeles County in Placerita Canyon Park, under which the first gold was discovered in California. We all think the first gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill, but actually the first gold strike was right in Los Angeles County underneath an oak tree in what is now Placerita Canyon Park, 2 years prior to the more famous Sutter's Mill gold strike. And there are other instances where trees were really critical in the culture and history of the development of the area. So yeah, I think there's a lot of civic pride in its trees. I was just involved up in the city of, not the city, but the area of Altadena, north of Pasadena, which just started a big tree or important tree program identifying and acknowledging or recognizing big important trees. And there was a lot of civic interest in their trees and how the trees played a role in their history.
There's also the big tree competition. The homeowners
right.
they try to claim the largest tree, and one of the more common large trees that you may see in the landscape is Ficus macrophylla, the Moreton Bay fig, and there are a couple of specimens. I guess you can go up to. There's one in Santa Monica, there's one in Glendora, and there's one in, was it Oxnard? Or Camarillo, that's where it is.
In the famous one is Santa Barbara train
Okay,
station.
we're getting close to wrapping it up here.
Okay.
So I want to thank you very much for being with us. I don't have much time left, but I'll try to sneak something in here. Some trees like the sequoia and the olive trees can live for thousands of years. There's a spot in Athens, Greece where an olive tree stands that the philosopher Plato has said to have been sat under and taught his students the difference between fact and opinion, 400 years before the birth of Christ. Thanks for watching.